Greetings, my dear viewers. It is I, Drayhon, and welcome back to a Dungeons & Dragons character concept. We're taking a look at the next race in alphabetical order, the Minotaur. Which, I'm going to go ahead and point out something real quick, because there's been some controversy about the player race of Minotaur. And that is that they are shorter than the actual Minotaur monster. The Minotaur monster, according to the wiki, is able to stand at 9 feet for males, while the player race Minotaur averages above 6 feet. Funny thing is, a female Minotaur averages around 7 feet for the actual monster. But I digress. The player race Minotaur is thought to be 7 feet, while the monster Minotaur is 9 feet, making the player race 2 foot smaller than the actual Minotaur. I'm going to go ahead and put this to rest for you because of the one size category difference between the actual Minotaur, large, and the player race Minotaur, medium. The Minotaur is actually on the low end of the large category of monsters, while the Minotaur player race is just about the high range of being medium, just a smidge under the Goliath, which can be 8 feet. So there's really not that much of a difference in size between the Minotaur player race and the Minotaur monster. So, my opinion, I would rule that the Minotaur player race is an adolescent Minotaur. That would explain why it is shorter than the monster Minotaur. We good? Great. Now, let's go ahead and get on to the main bulk of this video. The Minotaur player race was first introduced in Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, and got a revamp in Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse. So, half of the information I got is technically from Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, but that does not mean I skipped out on the Forgotten Realms lore. So, what is the best way to make a character with the Minotaur race using the lore presented to us? Because that's what we do here in these little character concepts, going over each of the player races. Well, for background, I think the best fit is going to be either an acolyte or a gladiator, because more often than not, that is what is going on. With the original Minotaurs, they are said, according to the lore, to be created by Baphomet when he transformed some of his most loyal followers into the first Minotaur. Other sources say that Minotaurs were created by a being known as the Lady of Pain, and they are guardians in her labyrinthian prison. So we got two different origins here. Honestly, I think that the Lady of Pain makes sense, and Baphomet came after that, and then continue to create more Minotaurs. But that's just my personal opinion. Your Dungeon Master will have to think of what the origin of the Minotaur might be. For all we know, your Dungeon Master might use the original lore, the Greek mythology for Dungeons and Dragons Minotaurs. Which, if that's the case, ew. That's all I'm gonna say. Ew. If you want to know why I'm saying ew, you might need to get into the Greek mythology. I believe... Oh, what was that channel my sister liked? Anyway, you can just look it up here on YouTube. The story of Minos. Anyway, let's go ahead and continue. For classes, Barbarian, Cleric, Fighter, Paladin, and Warlock will most likely be the common classes you would turn to for creating a Minotaur character. More often than not, probably a Paladin or a Cleric for your Ravnica adventures, but you'll probably have more Fighters and Barbarians. Warlock being, well, obviously the follower of Baphomet. So, one more thing, the Ravnica guilds that Minotaurs are said to be in are Gruul, Boros, and Rakdos. And, well, I would say that there are other guilds that they would be in. These three are the most common. Gruul, Boros, and Rakdos. Because there are cards in each of these guilds that have Minotaurs. Let's go ahead and move on to the first class to see what subclasses would best fit a Minotaur. For Barbarians, that's going to be Beast, Juggernaut, Berserker, Totem Warrior, and Zealot. I don't think I need to give much explanation for these, except for maybe the Totem Warrior. I would say that the best way to get a Totem Warrior Minotaur would be to use the Elk and Bear. This will give you an increased carrying capacity and some charging abilities, which Minotaurs technically already have, but the Elk gives you more options. The Juggernaut, I think, is the best one here. It is not a canonical, not a first part. I don't know what term I'm supposed to be using when it's not a part of the actual list of classes you can use. Because this is from Tal'Dorei. This is Matt Mercer's personal subclass, the Juggernaut. I love it. I think it's great. I would allow my characters to use it if they wanted to have a Juggernaut Barbarian. I think it's excellent. But some Dungeon Masters might not like it because it's technically a third party, quote unquote. But it's still created by a person who helps with the Dungeons and Dragons material. I don't know. Let's go ahead and move on to the next class, the Cleric. Blood Cleric, War Cleric, Strength Cleric, and Zeal Cleric. The Blood Domain, again, is from the Tal'Dorei series, while Strength and Zeal are actually from the Planeshift series. A Monket. I hope I pronounced that right. And honestly, they would kind of fit. And there are some Minotaur cards within the Akhmet sets. Omanket. Okay. Blood Clerics would be for more of that Lady of Pain entity that I talked about earlier. War just for your Ravnica Minotaurs. And Strength and Zeal just for generic Minotaur, though war could also go well with your Baphomet Minotaurs. But I'll cover the Baphomet followers a little bit later. Druid is our next class, and I have to say, this one I'm just scraping the bottom of the barrel here, because there's really not much to go off of for a Druid Minotaur. The only circle that really fits is the Land Druid, and that barely fits. The only two terrains that would work are Mountain and Underdark, since those are the favorite terrains of the Minotaur. Moving on to Fighter for your archetypes. While Champion and Battlemaster are pretty good archetypes, the most common, I would think, are the Brute, which is an unearthed arcana martial archetype, and the Rune Knight. I picked Rune Knight for the same reason why I picked a certain subclass later on, and that is because, according to the lore, Minotaurs like to carve runes into their horns. That's pretty neat. More often than not, it is the symbol of Baphomet, their demonic lord, but it's still pretty cool. It's kind of like us humans tattooing ourselves. It's cool, it makes sense, that's why I picked the Rune Knight. And also, Rune Knight is said to be a giant taught subclass. Minotaurs do have friends that are giants, and trolls. Trolls and ogres, so honestly that makes kind of sense to get the Rune Knight. On top of that, the fact that I listed earlier. Moving on to Paladin. This is again going off of the Ravnica series, mostly. Devotion, Watchers, and Heroism, which is Unearthed Arcana. This also could go for the Lady of Pain as well, as seen in the Oath of the Watchers, since the Lady of Pain protects the city of Sigil, which is the city of doors, which those doors lead to other planes, like the Abyss, the Seven Heavens, all that. It's her job to protect those doors. There's even an adventure where you get to meet the Lady of Pain and go into Sigil. So that would make sense if you have a Paladin that works with the Lady of Pain. Have Oath of the Watchers as your Minotaur's oath. Your Oath of Devotion would be more for the Ravnica's Minotaurs, so I just thought it would be nice to mention. Moving on to Ranger. We're going to go with the Gloomstalker, Horizon Walker, and Hunter. The Horizon Walker, once again, is for those Minotaurs who serve the Lady of Pain and are trying to protect the material plane from outsiders. Gloomstalker and the Hunter are more for the slightly more evil Minotaurs, or the Minotaurs that follow Baphomet. For Rogue, this one you probably think, why in the world would he choose Rogue? That seems weird. But again, Minotaurs, according to the lore, were created by Baphomet, and they stalk the endless mazes to kill their prey. So Assassin would work, Scout would probably work too, and I put Swashbuckler in here because it was funny, and there is a Minotaur pirate, Angrath, from the Magic the Gathering series. I thought I would reference that in this video as well. Moving on to Sorcerer, Rune Child, runes in the horns again, and the Divine Soul Sorcerer. Again, going off of the fact that there are two separate origin stories for the Minotaurs. The Divine Soul would be for Lady of Pain or for the Baphomet's Acolytes. You could go either way here. Next is the Warlock class. For those who have origins as an Acolyte of Baphomet, the Fiend patron makes the most sense. For those who serve the Lady of Pain, either the Celestial or the Hexblade Warlock would serve as their patron. Which, honestly, Hexblade is a little less obvious, but according to the lore, the Lady of Pain is friends with the Raven Queen, the person who created the Hexblades. And finally, Wizard. Now this one's a little weird, especially if you go into the lore, because according to the wiki, Minotaurs don't really go into the arcane that much. In fact, it's kind of a taboo. This is more for the Ravnica Minotaurs, because there is the Reckoner from that series, and they are war magic wizards. So, yeah, there we go. That is the video. I do hope that you enjoyed. Next week, I have 2 videos in the works to celebrate the National Star Wars Days, May the 4th, and Revenge of the 5th / Revenge of the 6th. So if you're looking for Star Wars builds, stay tuned for next week. Until next time, this has been Drahon, and I am offline.